Welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell, where we talk about real life, challenge assumptions, and explore different ways of being in the world. This week, for episode 10, we'll be doing something just a little bit different as I share with you what I learned from practicing mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, at a 4-day retreat at the Drala Mountain Center. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is a very specific type of mindfulness meditation. It involves a few different practices, but I'm going to talk with you about that tonight and the 4-day retreat that I just returned from up at Drala Mountain Center. So welcome. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. It should pop up in the comments, and I'll address them as they come. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, a little different than we've been doing things, so I have a lot of notes because I want to make sure I share all the best information with you. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be sharing with you about what's called MBSR. That's mindfulness-based stress reduction. This was founded by Jon Kabat-Zinn in 1979, but mindfulness meditation has been around for thousands and thousands of years. He was the first one to really apply it in a scientific method kind of way to a very specific thing, which in this case is stress reduction. I first came across mindfulness-based stress reduction, which I'm going to call MBSR moving forward. I first came across MBSR 11 years ago. If you watched my last episode, episode 9, which was about, my healing journey and how I got to hear from teaching in a nuclear power plant, teaching electronics. But if you watched that, I did talk about this retreat, and it's up at the Drala Mountain Center in Red Feather Lakes, Colorado. It was life-changing for me at the time. And here 11 years later, I had a very, very different experience. But again, I think life-changing all the same. So the reason that I was drawn to it in the beginning, 11 years ago, is because I was a techie type. I was very into science and, taking all of those things very seriously. I wasn't really into like crystals and hippie stuff and all that goodness that I'm into now. So thinking about regular mindfulness meditation was kind of odd for me. But okay, real life, my dogs are barking. Hang on a second. Girls, that's enough. Okay. I don't edit these. This is just how it goes. And if they get riled up, they get riled up. But as I was saying, I was drawn to MBSR specifically because it wasn't a woo-woo type of meditation. It was science-based. There's a lot of empirical studies on it that you can look up that really go into how mindfulness meditation impacts our physiology. Specifically, the brain is where they focus a lot of that research, but it goes into all the different benefits of the mindfulness meditation and the few other practices that I'll discuss with you in just a little bit. And so science techie Adrian was very attracted to that because I was thinking, okay, I can go do this meditation, but it's still science. It's not, it's not woo-woo because this was before I even found Reiki, right? Yeah. So mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, is pretty much composed of mindful meditation, body scans, walking meditation, and mindful movement, aka gentle yoga, right? It's just done very, very slowly. And I'm going to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail, but those are the main practices, and those are the practices that were included in the 4-day retreat that I just went to this past weekend and 11 years ago with the exact same teacher. The benefits of MBSR that they found through different types of scientific studies, and these are really well-constructed studies. And I say that coming to you with a PhD and somebody that pays attention to the details and where this information is coming from. So when I say they come from well-constructed studies, you can trust me. But feel free to be critical and look into it yourself too. I appreciate all of that. The biggest thing, well, not the biggest, I guess there's a lot of really cool parts about it, but one of the coolest parts, I think, is that within just 7 days of meditating, they find that changes in the brain start to develop. So like literally just within 7 days. And when I say meditating, doing any of these practices that I'm going to share with you in a little bit consistently for 7 days can create changes in your brain. And not just in the way your brain processes information, but it literally will grow extra gray matter and rewire and change pathways. So like we're talking physical changes in your brain will occur based on the way you pay attention to something, essentially, which is kind of incredible. They found increases in cortical areas that are in charge of attention. That one doesn't really surprise me because mindfulness meditation is all about paying attention, focus, right? They also found that there's more activity in the prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex, which is like right up against that prefrontal cortex. So for those of you who don't speak brain like I do, basically the prefrontal cortex is this front part of your brain, like right up here. It's the newest part of the brain in human beings, and it actually gets tired and will wear out over time. And when I say over time, I mean like across a day, right? Across hours. It's the part of the brain that involves self-control, self-regulation, impulse control, interpersonal regulation, emotional intelligence, decision-making, like all of that comes from this part of the brain. Now, a good example of how it gets tired is if you've had a really busy day and had to make a lot of decisions, and you come home, at like 6 o'clock and your partner or spouse is like, hey, like, what do you want for dinner? And you're like, oh my God, I don't know. I can't even think about it. It's because that part of your brain is tired, right? It's worn out. So in these studies, what they've shown is that there's increased activity and growth in those areas of the brain. So those people who practice mindfulness meditation regularly actually have higher levels of impulse control, emotional regulation. They're able to make clearer decisions based on things that are true to their value systems, right? Because it's not just about control, but they also found that there's increased efficiency in the brain as well, which is pretty cool. So you can get to the conclusion of what you're trying to decide quicker, which is why a lot of business people like this stuff. And they also found that it makes it easier to ignore distractions. And that's honestly, for me, that's one of the biggest things that has consistently drawn me to MBSR, right? Is being able to get through all the multitude of thoughts that are in my brain, the monkey brain, as they call it, so that I can do better work and focus better on my work. So one really cool thing that was new for me that I learned just today, because I did do a little bit of research before I popped on here today. I knew most of this already, but I wanted to, make sure I'm sharing the right stuff with you all. But I did find that they've been doing studies in memory for using MBSR or mindfulness meditation to improve memory. It's incredible because they're finding that it may actually help prevent Alzheimer's, which is, if you've ever been affected by that, I got to tell you, finding a cure or something to help with that would change so many people's lives. I can't even begin to explain it. If you know, like it's such a terrible disease. And if we can find anything to help with it, I'm all for it. So there's research out there now that's showing that it may help prevent Alzheimer's, which is fantastic. But they've also found in their research that there's physical increases to the gray matter of the brain in the hippocampus region. So again, for those of you who don't speak brain, the hippocampus is the part of the brain that's really, basically in charge of memory. Those of us that have had significant trauma, whether it was early childhood trauma or even trauma throughout, out of childhood in your adult years, the hippocampus is one of the areas of the brain that actually gets damaged by trauma, in case you didn't know. So people who've experienced significant trauma often have memory problems. So what they're finding is that by practicing mindful meditation, it can help heal the damage done to your brain by trauma, which again, incredible, right? So I think too often we talk about how trauma can create long-lasting damage, but we forget how resilient we are as human beings. And this is a perfect example of that. I mean, I'm going to go through these 4 different practices included in MBSR for you in a minute, but like just doing these practices can help you improve your memory and heal damage done by trauma, which is, it's just freaking incredible, right? The brain is so cool. Okay, so that's like the major benefits of it. But there's also this research has been done to show that it helps treat depression, anxiety, chronic pain, and even cancer and diabetes, which that's wild to me as well. But I think that goes to show that like everything's connected, right? It's not just about emotions, but it's about our physiology as well. So that's what it is. That's why we do it. Those are some of the benefits. Again, meditating does all this cool stuff, right? So I want to go into the 4 different practices I mentioned: the mindful meditation, the body scans, the walking meditation, and gentle movement, just so you know a little bit more about what each of those are. And I'm going to give you tips and tricks on how you can actually start doing it yourself and maybe create a practice at home. Now, is there stuff on the internet that you can look up that's going to give you more information about how to do this? Yes, of course. Highly recommend. In fact, when I went to Jon Kabat-Zinn's website earlier today, I saw that he now has an app. So feel free to go to his website, Google Jon Kabat-Zinn, look him up, and check out his app because it looked like it was free. And I bet there would be a lot of cool stuff on there that could be helpful. So let's start with mindful meditation. Now, if you know me at all or have watched any of these podcast episodes, you could probably tell that I'm pretty high energy. It's just kind of like how I roll, right? And it would be easy to assume that somebody like me would have what they call monkey brain, which is where my mind is kind of constantly pinging all over the place with 1,000 different thoughts. Blessing and a curse is what I'll say to that. I repeated this retreat, right? I did 11 years ago and I repeated it because I've really fallen away from my mindfulness meditation. I was actually kind of like joking in my head, like instead of falling off the wagon, I've fallen off the mat, right? So I really fell away from my mindfulness meditation, and I've seen a decrease in my ability to focus my thoughts and focus my attentions. And I've tried to get back to it, but with everything going on, it's just been really tough. I'm not going to try and pretend it's not. It has. So I thought going to this retreat would be nice, like as a reset for me. By the way, the retreat was at the Drala Mountain Center in Red Feather Lakes, Colorado. Absolutely gorgeous and really not expensive. Like not cheap, right? But not prohibitive. And they do a lot of scholarships too, because they have a lot of really awesome donors, which you could be one of. Just throwing that out there. So if you're interested, feel free to check this out. Again, listen to this full episode and I'll tell you all about it. You'll have a better idea if it's for you. So I went back to this retreat because I really wanted to get back into the habit of the mindful meditation. That was the big one for me. The other 3, body scans, walking meditation, and mindful movement, I do all the time, and that's pretty standard in my practice. Walking meditation is one of my absolute favorites. And I also have taken a lot of the key elements from the MBSR program into other areas of my life as well, like swimming. I just went swimming today. And when I swim laps, I'm in a very mindful space, right? So anyways, back to mindful meditation specifically. So monkey mind, blah, 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 right? When we work with mindful meditation, there's some misconceptions that we're trying to like completely silence the mind, wipe everything away, nothing is there. And if you have any thoughts, you're doing it wrong. And that's not true. So meditation is a practice, like literally a practice, which means we're always practicing. And like some days you're going to feel really good about your practice and some days you're not. Just like when you play sports, right? Some days you have a really awesome day at practice and some days you don't. So when it comes to mindful meditation, we do want to create clarity in our minds, but it's really through being able to focus our attention on something specific, or when you're really good, nothing at all, right? So one of the easiest, well, I'd say there were 3 different things I learned this time that were new for me that I kind of wanted to pass along. So when you sit in mindfulness meditation, you want to have like as straight of a spine as possible. Like think about like the pictures you've seen of people meditating that are all like perfect and pretty and their legs are crossed. So like that, right? Shoulders. I think the teacher I had, Janet, she's really fantastic. She was saying that, it's about being dignified. Like we want to have a dignity in our posture. Okay. So straight spine. We don't want our chin up though. We want the chin, level. You can even do a slight tuck if you'd like. We don't want to be slouching though. And you can sit in a regular chair or you can sit on a meditation cushion. I prefer the cushions. However, one thing that I learned during this particular retreat is that my body can no longer sit cross-legged like that for hours and hours at a time. We'll talk more about that in a little while. But if you just want to sit in a chair, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. The straight posture does help kind of keep you focused. It aligns your energetic system. And it just, there's just something about it. I got to be honest. I usually am not a stickler about this kind of stuff, but when it comes to this type of meditation, there's something about it that helps create clarity. I've seen it and it works pretty awesome. So posture is the first one. Don't be afraid to add more cushions if your hips or your knees are hurting. If you're sitting on the floor, wearing cushions, play around with different postures. You can Google like meditation postures. There's YouTube videos, there's pictures, there's all kinds of stuff. Feel free to mess around with different things and see what works for you. If you don't have an unlimited budget to just go buy a bunch of cushions, right? You can find a meditation center or a yoga studio and ask them like, hey, would you mind if I use some of your props or work with some of your props to just see what kind of seat, they call it your seat, right? To see what kind of seat works best for me. And I would bet you they'd be cool with it. So anyway, so you get your seat, get comfortable, you close the eyes, right? Take a nice deep breath. And then you want to find something to focus on. Like that's the easiest way to get started. So a lot of the time people focus on their breath. And I'll say a lot of people focus on their breath. And they just focus on the sensation of the air coming in through the nostrils. You can even follow it down through the throat, into the chest, right? And then back out, the sensation coming out of the nostrils. And you're not trying to change it. You're not trying to control the breath. You're just paying attention. It's giving that monkey brain something to focus on, right? So for me, focusing on the breath does not work. I don't know why, but every time I focus on the breath, I want to change it. And that kind of like defeats the purpose of this meditation, right? We are not trying to control or change or shift anything. We're just finding one thing to focus on. So another thing that you can focus on is the sensation of your fingers touching. I tried that this time for the first time, and it was really, really helpful. So as your little monkey brain is in there, oh, don't forget about this and think about that and blah, 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 blah. For me, I just say, hey, listen. And usually my thought talks back to me. I promise I'm not crazy. But it's like, yeah, what do you want? And I'm like, just pay attention, right? To the fingers. Just pay attention to the sensation in the fingers. And so that's all I'm paying attention to is what it feels like for my 2 pads of my fingers to be touching. And not doing any fancy like hand mudras or anything like that. Just holding your hands together like this as they sit in your lap, right? But what does that feel like? Or if your hands are open, paying attention to what it feels like with the back of your hand resting on your thigh or your calf, or not your calf, your thigh, right? And just maintaining your attention there. One of the hardest things that happens is we forget we're supposed to be paying attention to that area, right? So next thing you know, you're focused on what it feels like, the skin of your hand against your thigh. And the next thing you know, you got your grocery list going through your head. So when that happens, don't yell at yourself. Don't get mad at yourself. Okay. It's okay. Because it happens to all of us. It's okay. Accept it, right? Try not to be judgmental. We're not trying to punish or be angry about anything. We're just in a practice, right? So we're like, oh, look at that. Off I went. And then bring it back and say, okay, so remember what we were doing? Oh, right. We were focusing on the feeling of the back of our hand touching our leg. And you just bring yourself right back. Okay. Other things that you can try that might be helpful if it's not the breath or it's not, the feel of your hand on your leg or your fingers touching. You can also focus on, I actually did an ocean visual with my breathing. So again, eyes closed. And when I breathed in, I saw an ocean wave come into the shore. When I breathed out, the ocean wave receded. And the visual helped keep my attention better. And I was able to stay there longer. So that might be helpful for you. And then one of the other people at the retreat had such a great idea. He said that he often uses mala beads as a way to kind of count his breath. So he has a mala, I want to say, I think it's a bracelet, not a necklace, which on one of the previous episodes, we were talking about mala beads, mala bracelets. They're kind of like rosaries, but they're not Catholic. And they're just really pretty strings of beads. And it'll be, several small beads and then one larger one. And what he does is he'll hold the bracelet in his hand. And as he breathes, he rotates a bead through his fingers and he just moves on to the next bead. So a breath in, next bead, a breath out, next bead. And he just keeps doing that. And it helps him have something tactile to pay attention to, but he's also paying attention to his breath at the same time. So I haven't tried it, to be honest, but it seemed like a really cool technique. So there's something else to try. And those are all for mindfulness meditation. I've also heard of people like staring at a single candle flame. I don't know why, but that freaks me out. Like it's going to burn my retina or something. Maybe I'm silly. I don't know. But there's lots of different things that you can take a minute with and pay attention to. And so that's mindfulness meditation. Now, how long should you do mindfulness meditation? There's this saying that it's, if you don't have time to meditate, that means you need to meditate even more. You can think whatever you want about that. Certain days I laugh harder at it than others. But basically with mindfulness meditation, you can do it for 5 minutes. You can do it for 3 hours. It is completely up to you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, my body is not a fan of sitting cross-legged for long periods of time. We have found this out. I've also found that sitting for long periods of time, just period, isn't great for my body. So I probably will not be sitting in mindfulness meditation for an hour at a time anytime soon or like ever. For me, 15 to 20 minutes feels good after I do some of the other practices we're going to talk about in a second here. So it really is up to you. I would say if you're brand new to it, try 5 minutes and see how it goes. Do 5 minutes a day, which is seriously like nothing. You probably wait in line longer at Starbucks than you would like sitting in 5 minutes of meditation. So 5 minutes a day, you can even do it in your office chair at work and you just close your eyes, breathe, focus, right? And again, if your brain drifts off, which I can almost guarantee it will, don't be mean to yourself. Be nice, be graceful, because it happens to all of us. And just redirect your focus. Because every time we add negative energy, oh man, I can't believe I did that again. It just ruins everything. It just throws it all out, right? So, I just noticed that I am not paying attention anymore. and then just bring yourself back, and that's okay. So start with 5 minutes. Do 5 minutes a day for a week or so. See how it goes. If you think you're ready to try 7 or 10, try 7 or 10. If you think, no, I still need to stay at 5, stay at 5. There's no rules, and it's not like getting this down is going to let you conquer the world or anything like that. This really is a practice that's just for you. So you can change or adapt it to anything you need. And, maybe you get up to a point where you're practicing for 30 minutes and that's awesome. And then you have a week where you just don't have time for it. And so you go back to practicing for 10 minutes or 5. That's okay, right? It's no big deal. So anyway, that's mindfulness meditation. There's some ideas for you to get started if you're interested. And the next technique that they do in MBSR is body scans. I do body scans all the time with my clients in so many of the classes that I teach. I think they are fantastic. And you can Google body scan and find so many different types, so many varying lengths all over the internets. But they're really, really great for mindfulness. All right, that's what we're working on here. But just paying attention to our bodies, which sounds so simple, but we are really bad at it. Our culture does not support paying attention to our bodies, because in order to really pay attention to our bodies, we kind of have to slow down. And it's not really a thing that we do in the United States. Slow. We don't do that good. So body scans are a beautiful opportunity for you to slow down and just spend some time with your body. It really, it helps with proprioception, which is how you know where your different body parts are in space and time. So if you're a klutz like me, and maybe you run into walls and stuff, like it happens. This type of meditation can be really good for you. It also helps with interoception, which is the inside of our bodies, right? Getting used to how those things feel. And people who have a lot of chronic pain or chronic symptoms often create poor interoception because they don't want to pay attention. I say they. I might be one of they. Not going to lie. I have a lot of chronic pain. And sometimes, when people ask me, like, are you in any pain right now? I actually have to take a second and think about it, because I haven't been paying attention. Because if I did pay attention to how much pain I was in all day, I don't know if I could get anything else done, right? So if you're one of those people who has a lot of chronic pain and ignores their body a lot, somebody that's a klutz, runs into things all the time, or maybe you're just really, really busy and don't pay attention to your body, a body scan is a beautiful, beautiful option for you. They're super simple. You can do it sitting. You can do it with your eyes open, your eyes closed. You can do it laying down, all different places. Now, the quieter and calmer you are when you do it, the quieter and calmer the environment is when you do it, the more you get out of it, in my opinion. But essentially, you can start at your head, your toes, your fingers, whatever you want. And it's literally just taking a second to, let's say, fill into your big toe on your left foot. How does your big toe feel right now? And if I ask you that question, like really take a minute, if you're listening to me right now, and think about, how does your left big toe feel right now? You probably have no idea, to be honest. You might even have to wiggle it, right? To be like, yeah, where is my left big toe? I don't even know. And then when you're there, if you're wearing shoes or socks, how does it feel? The skin against the sock, right? Or the shoe. I'm barefoot. So for me, it's like, how does that left big toe feel against the carpet under my skin? And then you go to the next toe and the next toe and the next toe. And then the bottom of the foot, the top of the foot, the heel, the ankle, the calf, the shin, front of the knee, back of the knee, sides of the knee. And you would do that for your entire left leg. Then you would do the same thing for the entire right leg, the entire left arm, hands and fingers, entire right arm, hands and fingers. You want to do your entire chest and torso. Oh, don't forget the groin, your abdomen, lower back, middle back, upper back, shoulders, neck, head, top of the head, the face, the cheeks, the jaw, right? Noticing where your tongue is placed in your mouth and maybe allowing it to relax. All of that is a body scan. And so you can do it with somebody guiding you, or you literally can just do it yourself, right? And you can do it faster or slower. You can just say left foot instead of going toe by toe. It's completely up to you. The body scans, beautiful, simple, easy, so beneficial. Remember all the benefits I mentioned at the very beginning of this when I was talking about like brain health, Alzheimer's, hippocampus, cancer, diabetes, why we do this. Body scans can help with those things. Not that complicated and not hard. Anybody can do it. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is walking meditations. This is also a favorite of mine because a lot of the people I know, especially students and clients of mine, because like attracts like, are like, oh my God, I cannot meditate, Adrian. I have too much energy. I can't just sit still like that. Perfect. Let's try walking meditation. So with walking meditation, you're walking. Literally, that's what you're doing. And you're just paying attention. That, I don't know if you've noticed at this point, like maybe that's the key term, paying attention. Mindfulness is paying attention. So when we're doing a walking meditation, we're going to walk slower than we normally would. You don't want to walk too slow so that you fall over, because it becomes a real thing that you have to deal with. If you've never walked very, very slow, try it. It's interesting. Balance becomes difficult. But I digress. So walking meditation, you want to walk slower than you normally would. Heel to toe, toe to heel, whatever works for you. There's no rules. And as you take a step, we're paying attention to the foot touching the floor, the sensation of the foot touching the floor as it comes down, the feel of the carpet, tile, dirt, whatever is under your feet. The pressure that is being put on the foot as your weight transfers to it. And then the sensation of lifting the foot off of that surface as the pressure changes, the weight balance changes, and then shifting your attention to the other foot, which as this one's now coming up, the other one is coming down. And so it's literally just paying attention to the sensations in your feet as you are walking. Seems simple. All of this seems simple because it is. It's all simple. It's just not easy. Like a lot of the stuff I teach, I think it's all simple. It's just not easy. That's why it's a practice again. So try this out. What I would recommend is if you're going to do a walking meditation, not walking around our neighborhood. That's not where we want to do it because there's way too much going on. You got to be concerned about your safety, blah, 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 right? So you want to pick a safe place that is simple and kind of has boundaries. So for example, I have what's called a galley kitchen. It's just a long, narrow passageway in my kitchen, right? So I could probably start at like one end of my kitchen and just walk the length, turn around and walk back. If you have a nice yard, you could do this barefoot out in the grass. You'll also get some grounding in, which would be great. You can just go in a circle. Make up your own circle. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because the point is paying attention to the sensation in the feet. But you just want to be in a safe enough, controlled enough environment that you don't have to be, worried about your safety. And you can just pay attention to your feet. Another thing that I've done in classes is we'll do this with yoga mats. So you can roll out a yoga mat and you start at one end of the mat and you just slowly walk from one end to the other. When you get to the other end, you turn around and you walk back. Now, how long should we do this for? Just like with the mindful meditation, you can do it as long as you want. You can do it for 5 minutes. You can do it for 30 minutes. You can do whatever you want. In the retreat that we just did, I think the longest one we did was 30 minutes. That's a long time to just pay attention to the bottoms of your feet. I actually would change up my step once in a while and notice not only my feet, but how the muscles in my legs felt as my steps were different, right? So you can do that as well. That's one of the techniques I use if I start getting bored and having a hard time, is I'll add different areas of my body to pay attention to. But again, it's still the same thing. We're still focusing on the body, right? Focusing on the feet, focusing on the legs as we're walking. We're not allowing our mind to tell us what to pay attention to. That's really the key, right? Is that we're saying, no, this is what we're focusing on. This is what we're paying attention to. Okay, so that is walking meditation. The last one, so we've talked about mindful meditation, body scans, walking meditation. The last one is mindful movement. So mindful movement is essentially yoga. It is just the slower version of yoga. So the poses that we do are yoga poses. But you could call them stretching if you'd like, whatever floats your boat. And the key is that, and this is my favorite kind of yoga, maybe because, honestly, this course and the MBSR retreat 11 years ago was my introduction to yoga, which is kind of wild, or movement. We'll say mindful movement. But it's the yoga where you're actually paying attention to how your body is feeling and responding in each pose. So it's not about, fancy poses or twists. It's not about balancing in crazy ways. It's not about fitness, and getting in tone and really shaped and looking pretty. It's not about any of that. So the mindful movement in MBSR is really, truly about paying attention to your body. So whether it's chair pose, whether it's warrior pose, whether it's final resting pose or a corpse pose, whatever you'd like to call it, it's just noticing the different sensations in your body and not judging them, right? And in this case, not even being curious about them, but just noticing. We're not trying to change anything. We're not trying to shift anything. We're just noticing. All right. So that's what the mindful movement piece is. All right. So those are the 4 different ones that we practiced. And I think they're like the big hitters for MBSR: mindful meditation, body scans, walking meditation, mindful movement. My favorite really is the mindful movement. And, the last 3, body scan, walking meditation. I do like to sit in silent meditation. It's just hard on my body because I have a lot of chronic pain and my joints get really, really stiff after I sit for too long of a period of time in any one position. Even like when I drive for long periods of time, which I just went to Colorado, so it's like a 10-hour drive, I bounce and fidget and wiggle in the car. Not because I'm hyperactive and a little nuts, which those might also be true, but because if I stay stiff for too long, my body hurts. Okay. So that's the biggest reason that I am more of a fan of the last 3, especially the last 2, is because there's movement involved. And for me, the more I can move my body, the more I am paying attention to it. I would like to think we're all that way. That's not always true. But when I do even the mindful movement, right? Yoga, when I do that, it's so much easier for me to be singularly focused on my body, where my hands are, maybe the burning in my thigh or my calf if I'm holding a certain pose. The breath is so much more pronounced for me in that space. But that's just for me, right? And everyone is different. So that's really why I kind of wanted to go through all 4 is everyone, I think, needs to figure it out for themselves and find what works best for them. I think that's most important. So one other thing I wanted to share before I went into the retreat and what that experience was like was a piece of paper that our teacher Janet handed us. It's an excerpt from Jon Kabat-Zinn's book, Full Catastrophe Living. He has several books and I've read, I think, 2 or 3 of them. If you go to his website, johncabotzen.com, I believe, it has a list of all his books, but this is one of his best, in my opinion, from the ones I've read anyway, Full Catastrophe Living. And it's the 9 attitudes. I think these are really important because I think this helps change the way that we view the world, not just our meditation practice. And I will say that for me, when I went through this 11 years ago, it was, I'm going to get teary as I do. But for me, these 9 attitudes really changed my life. Learning how to be in this space with these 9 attitudes, learning how to really apply this to my life had a huge, huge impact on me. So I just want to go through them and share each of them with you and maybe talk about them a little bit. We'll see what comes forward. So the first one is non-judging. Cultivating the stance of being an impartial witness to whatever we are experiencing, breaking out of the habitual categorizing and judging of experiences, which locks us into automatic responses and reactions. If you are a client of mine or who have ever been to a class of mine, you've probably heard me say, instead of judging, let's be curious, right? So judging is one of the things that holds us back the most as human beings. It's one of the ways that we get in our own way consistently all the time, in the biggest of ways. And we all do it, all of us, because the brain is actually designed to judge things. It's like a self-protection mode, right? It's what keeps us safe. Like, that is unpleasant. That is fantastic. I don't like that. I want more of that. That's what our brain does. It judges stuff. But at a certain point, when we judge too often or we judge the wrong things, we limit ourselves and we cut ourselves off from stuff, right? One of the metaphors that was shared with me when I was in school at Pacifica was when we judge something or label something, we kill off any opportunity for it to be anything but what we have labeled it or judged it as being. And that was really impactful for me. Because when we think about that, right? Think about, you go through your day all day long, labeling and judging. That's what we do. And nothing can be anything besides what you've called it, unless you allow it to be. So when we do these mindfulness practices, we really are practicing non-judgment because we're just paying attention, right? So like if I'm in a certain posture in mindful movement in yoga and my left thigh is burning, I could be like, oh my gosh, come on, thigh, you got this, get it together. We're stronger than this. That's very judgmental. And it's also really negative towards myself, right? Not nice. Instead, if I was going to be just paying attention and not judgment, I would say, wow, there's a burning sensation in my thigh right now. It seems like that part of my body might be struggling. I wonder what would happen if I shifted my weight a little bit, right? And so instead of being judgmental, that's being curious. And the more we practice that non-judging in these mindfulness practices, the easier it comes up for us in everyday life. Beautiful. This is like, to me, these are like the bonuses, right? Like the bonus points to meditation that people don't really talk about. And I think going like through these attitudes like helps clear that up. It's not just rewiring your brain, but as we practice non-judging during meditation, that helps us rewire that part of the way we see the world too, so that we can move into the world in that way as well. Okay, moving on. Patience, a type of wisdom, recognizing that at times things must unfold at their own pace, letting go of the tendency to be impatient with ourselves our efforts, etc. I have definitely had moments of impatience. And I will say I have gotten much better over the years. But this is really important as well, because especially in our culture in the US, we want to control all the things. And we are often encouraged to believe that if things aren't happening in a certain way or in a certain time, it's because we're not trying hard enough. And if we only would exert more control or push harder or faster, then things would happen. I will tell you from my own experience, growing up very much that way, when I started to cultivate patience in my life, this really beautiful, I'm going to say letting go, which is another one of these attitudes we'll talk about in a little bit, but this really beautiful letting go also occurred. And it's an allowing, right? So like having patience to let things unfold the way that they need to, and just seeing what happens. And, you can ask yourself, like, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen if I, don't try to rush this along or have that sense of urgency. And it's usually not that bad. like sometimes, just having patience. A good example would be like when you're in line for something. And like, I don't know how many times I've been at the grocery store, and the person in front of me has like a whole bunch of groceries, and I have like 4 things. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm almost every single time will say, it's all right. We're all at the grocery store doing the same thing. We all came here to buy things. And, I have patience in that moment, because who cares? What's the point? Is me sitting there being worried about how long this is taking going to benefit me? Nope. It's going to make me feel like crap. It's going to bring all kinds of negative energy into my zone. And all I'm going to think is, I'm going to be late. I can't believe this is taking so long. Like, ugh, right? Like, just think about those words and how that affects you. Gross. Okay, moving on. The next one is beginner's mind. So coming into each experience as if for the first time, freeing ourselves from preconceptions and biases so that we may see things in a new light and perceive new possibilities. Also beautiful. This, I think, is really great for those of us who have been practicing for a while, who may be teaching or sharing with others and kind of think like, we got this down, like we know what's up, right? Nope, because every single experience is an opportunity for doing things in a new and different way. So just moving into each practice with the beginner's mind, and again, curiosity, like, what's going to show up for me today? I wonder what this practice will be like. And when we allow for that beginner's mind, again, we allow for opportunity and possibility. Trust, learning to have faith in ourselves and in our own intuition, honoring our own feelings, our native wisdom, following our own path, not imitating someone else. Big. So this isn't just trust, but this is trust in ourselves, which was one of my big takeaways from the retreat. Okay. And I'll talk about that after I get through these. Depending on your upbringing and your culture, you may not have very much trust in yourself. But these practices, right? Cultivating that trust as we are sitting with our body and sitting with our experience is going to help bring that further into your life. And the more that we can honor our bodies, our feelings, our intuition, the stronger our feet are here on this earth, right? And the stronger, I don't want to say the stronger you can become, because you already are strong. We just forget. But it just brings you back to that inner strength, right? It reminds us kind of who we are. The next one is non-striving, which is a non-doing with the intention of creating space for simply being who we are, being with what is already here, realizing that in meditation, the best way to achieve our goals is to back off from striving and focusing on seeing and accepting things as they are in the moment. Now, that doesn't mean you don't give up and you don't have goals. That's not what that means. What it means is you be with what is. You can set the goal, set the plan, and let things take course as they need to, right? Versus pushing. It always reminds me of the hand that grasps the sand, right? Now, if you hold it gently, the sand will stay. But the tighter you grasp, the more likely that sand's going to pour through your fingers, right? So the non-striving helps you actually achieve your goals easier and quicker than if you are trying to force or push too hard towards something. The next one is acceptance, seeing and accepting things as they really are in the present, which reduces the energy drained by denying, suppressing, or resisting what is already here, thus freeing and focusing our energies for positive change. This is hard. Just like a lot of this stuff where I say it's simple, but it's not easy. Not only is this not easy, this is hard. Accepting. Because I don't know about you, but I've been in many situations where I'm like, no, I don't want it to be like this. This is bullshit. And so, especially when it comes to like big things like grief and loss, change that we didn't anticipate or ask for, right? There's a lot of times that we get in that space and we fight it. Deep breath. But again, through these practices, we practice acceptance of what is, right? No, we're not judging it, trying to change it. We're just accepting it and allowing it to be. And that bleeds over into the rest of our life as well. I would say it's worth putting in the effort because it definitely helps get rid of some of the resisting energy that is often existing within us and it creating nasty energetic blocks. It really gets in our way. It's an icky energy. So finding ways to accept what is important. And I will also say, something I say a lot with clients is it's okay to accept what is and still want change. So accepting is not settling. You can accept the way something is and still plan to create change. So know that, okay? It's not giving up. It's just accepting. The next one is letting go, non-attachment, letting go of our investment in particular thoughts, feelings, and experiences, not elevating one thing while rejecting another, but accepting whatever is here in the moment. I think that speaks for itself pretty well. And I'll just add, when I work on letting go with clients, I often say, be like Elsa or be like Taylor and shake it off. Right? Have a little fun with it. Not everything has to be terribly serious, but really letting go. So when we can get to a place where we're accepting something, if something's not for you, if it's not serving you, let it go. Just free that energy up. Let it go somewhere else. You don't need it. Let it go. The next one is gratitude, coming into the present moment with gratitude, because for one thing, you're alive. Gratitude allows us to be aware of the wonder and abundance of the present moment and not take things for granted. I'm not going to go into gratitude because I feel like gratitude just gets beat all over the place. Every social media outlet that I have ever been to, there is so much about gratitude, necklaces, bracelets, t-shirts, right? At the end of the day, though, I think it's really about the feeling of gratitude, not just the word. And so if you haven't spent much time in that, I would invite you to. Like, instead of being like, what am I grateful for before you go to bed? Take a minute and think about something that brings the feeling of gratitude into your body and sit with that feeling, that somatic feeling, that emotional feeling in your body, rather than trying to focus on words and things, right? Okay. And then the last one is generosity, giving yourself over to life, giving other people what would make them happy, not for yourself so that you can pat yourself on the back, but because it gives joy to others. Giving time, attention, and thought to someone other than yourself demonstrates that you care. And that matters, right? It makes a big difference for people. So these are the 9 attitudes shared by Jon Kabat-Zinn in his book, Full Catastrophe Living. Totally recommend it. Fantastic read. All right. Now, I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience up at the Drala Mountain Center. If you're thinking about going to a retreat there, maybe this can help you. If you have questions, feel free to contact me and we can chat. So basically, the big overarching theme for me is really focused on the fact that I don't label things. I do my best not to label things as good and bad. But I don't I try really hard not to see things as black or white, because again, that limits their opportunities, possibilities, etc. Almost the entire retreat, I'm going to be honest, was very physically uncomfortable for me. It was not an experience I would want to repeat because, again, my body does not like sitting cross-legged for hours and hours at a time. I was also at 8,000 feet, which is where the retreat center is. So altitude could have had a play in it as well. I'm not sure. Not sleeping in my own bed, etc. If you have chronic pain or illness or injury, you know what I'm talking about. All these little things add up, right? Spoon theory. So I had a really difficult time physically. However, my biggest reason for going was to help deal with all of the conflicting thoughts that have been in my head recently. I'm working on multiple projects. I have several books that are about to go into publishing, which is fantastic, but it's a lot of work. And I also have a new area of work that I'm looking at going into as well. So it's just a lot. And so I was hoping to get out of this retreat some calmness of the brain, some simplicity. What I will say is that even with all of my physical challenges, I really did notice. It was funny because I didn't notice it first. And then when I reflected, I was like, oh my God, right? It didn't make the thoughts go away. Like the thoughts were all there. But by the second day, and we were in meditation a lot. By the second day, by the end of the day, what I did notice is that there was just one thought. So instead of there being 10 competing thoughts, it was like the ones that were less important had fallen away. And the most important one, which was honestly one of the books that I'm working on right now, it was the layout and different things to add to it. I mean, it was good stuff, right? It's like it rose to the top like cream and said, here I am, pay attention to me. And it was fantastic. And it made my heart so happy because that really was what I wanted out of this retreat. It was 4 days long. We got there Thursday, left Sunday, and Friday and Saturday, both days we started practice at 7 a.m. and practiced until 8 p.m. with a 2-hour break after lunch and meal breaks, right? An hour for meals. But that's it. Otherwise, we were either in mindfulness meditation, walking meditation, a body scan, or movement during all of those hours. Pretty wild. The other thing that I really picked up on this retreat is that I am not a quiet and calm person. And if we go back to the 9 attitudes, right, there was that one that's about trusting who we are and our intuition of who we are. And I really feel like I do good at not judging myself. And I found an area that I've been judging myself in, which was quite interesting for me. I went to this retreat because I had fallen off my mat, right? Fallen off the meditation mat wagon and needed to get that practice back. Like that's what I was telling myself. We need to get serious about our meditation practice and get this back, Adrian. And after sitting in that practice for hours and hours and hours, we also had quite a few hours of loving silence, which is where we don't talk. We have these little name badges that say loving silence, so no one will talk to you. So many hours of silence on top of all the hours of silent meditation, on top of the very, very quiet and serene mountain environment we were in. No music was being played anywhere. The colors there are very beautiful and serene and calm. What I realized is that is not me. And I prefer loudness and laughter and conversations and music and noise and all that good stuff. Again, I am not saying that I had a bad time at the retreat at all. But what I'm saying is that it was a beautiful opportunity for me to discover an area that I've been judging myself in, not trusting myself, not honoring who I was or am, and a beautiful opportunity for me to do so, right? So I really came away from it feeling so grateful and so thankful that I was able to spend that time there. I'm really grateful to my teacher, Janet, and to all the other students. There were 23 of us in this meditation retreat. Really grateful to all of them. It's always so wonderful to be allowed to accompany somebody on their journey, right? As they're moving through whatever phase of life they're in, for whatever reason they're there. So that was really beautiful too. So if you were interested in a meditation retreat, they have silent retreats as well. So this is something you're like, I might want to try that out. I highly recommend them. They're beautiful, quiet, silent, stillness, serene. The stupa, they're like temple, if you will, gorgeous. If you haven't gone to my Instagram, go check it out. I posted pictures there of my time. I hiked up to it at night, and it was absolutely beautiful in the snow. So go ahead and check that out. But yeah, I do highly recommend Drala Mountain Center for anyone that's interested in that. Okay, well, that just about wraps us up for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, I wish you the absolute best. I hope you have a really lovely night and that you will join us next week for episode 11. All right, take care. Thank you so much for joining us on the Energetic Psyche for episode number 10. We live stream every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time on Instagram and Facebook, sometimes on LinkedIn. We're glad that you joined us, and I hope to see you next week for episode 11. Have a lovely rest of your week. Take care.